Benjamin Franklin is the kind of famous person people can't leave alone. The research used a living person to track the DNA, Charlene Chambers King. She is a 9th great-grandniece of Franklin through his maternal aunt, Doris Folger. The test pointed to haplogroup 5, which is linked to prehistoric Iberian origins around 12,000 years ago, with migrations to Britain. That is not a hidden royal line or a secret bloodline. It is human history at a deep time scale, the kind of slow movement that turns into ordinary families in England and then ordinary families in colonial America. Franklin has no direct paternal Y-DNA sample because his male lines died out. That means no straight father-to-son line exists that can be tested from Franklin's own Y chromosome. Benjamin Franklin did something strange with his family story. He didn't start it with a proud list of important men. He started it with a woman who, in today's words, was bought out of a contract. A woman who crossed the ocean as a servant. A woman whose freedom cost $20. If you don't know that, you walk around believing a softer story about Franklin's rise, like it began in a clean room with clean chances. It didn't. The story begins with a ship in 1635, with fear, with religious pressure, and with a young woman working off her passage as someone else's maid. Mary Morell was from Norwich, England, and she sailed to the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1635 on a ship that carried Reverend Hugh Peters and his family. She served as their maid to repay her passage. She didn't step onto the ship as a visitor. She owed work and years. Her problem was simple and crushing. She needed a way to get to America, and the price was her freedom for a while. On that same ship was Peter Folger, traveling with his parents. Peter's problem was that the woman he wanted was legally tied to another household through indenture. His choice was to spend $20 to end it. That is not a small amount. It is about $4,000 today. Imagine handing over the cost of a big, serious purchase, not to buy land or a tool, but to buy someone's time back from a contract. Peter later called that money the best appropriation of money he had ever made. That isn't a polite sentence. It sounds like love, and it sounds like a decision that echoes for generations. Mary became free because Peter paid. They married in 1644 in Dedham, Massachusetts. 9 children came from that marriage, including Abia Folger, Franklin's mother. That one fact turns Mary's indenture story into Franklin's origin story in a direct line. Without Mary surviving the voyage, without her contract being bought out, there is no Abia, and without Abia, there is no Franklin. Franklin came from a line that began with a contract and a buyout. His mother's mother was once someone else's maid, bound by a debt. Benjamin Franklin was 10 years old when his world started to smell like hot animal fat. It was a thick, stubborn smell that clung to hands and hair. His father's shop was not a pretty place. It was greasy, busy, and loud. While other boys dreamed about the sea, Benjamin stood near boiling tallow and learned what grown-up work looked like. He cut wicks, filled molds, and ran errands. He did it because the family needed it. He was one of 17 children, 15th in line. In a small Boston house on Milk Street, space had to be shared. If someone laughed, everyone heard it. Franklin's father, Josiah, was a tallow chandler who boiled animal fat into soap and molded candles. Benjamin hated the greasy work. That dislike became pressure that pushed him to look for another path. He briefly dreamed of sailing, but his father had a reason to fear the water. Benjamin's older brother Josiah had vanished at sea. The sea was not just romance, it was risk. To steer Benjamin away from a deadly dream, Josiah apprenticed him to his older brother James in a printing shop at age 12. That move was a father placing a child into a trade that lived on words. The printing shop was still hard work, with long hours, but it ran on ink and paper. Benjamin learned typesetting and how ideas could travel beyond a single room. But the relationship with James became tense. The shop was abusive. In 1723, at age 17, Franklin turned his back on Boston and ran. He fled to Philadelphia with $1 silver and 3 rolls. He didn't leave with a plan that felt safe. He left with almost nothing. If you think Franklin's story begins with lightning and wise sayings, you're missing the real start. The real version is a hungry teenager who gambled everything on one choice. He found work with printer Samuel Keimer and boarded with him. He didn't wait for someone to rescue him. He made himself useful. He impressed Governor William Keith, who funded a London trip for training. The trip was unpaid, but it honed Franklin's skills. He returned in 1726 and eventually relaunched the Pennsylvania Gazette in 1729, turning it profitable with sharp writing. He went from employee to owner, from taking orders to shaping what the city read. He founded the Junto Club for Self-Improvement and published Poor Richard's Almanac, which became a bestseller. By 1748, at 42, he retired wealthy. He franchised his printing shops and turned his skill into a machine that kept paying him. But on one point, Benjamin Franklin locked the door and threw away the key. The mother of his first son, William, stayed unnamed for the rest of Franklin's life. William was born out of wedlock in Philadelphia around 1730 or 1731. The woman who gave birth to him vanished into silence so complete that she is still unknown. In Franklin's world, that kind of erasure was protection. Illegitimate was a label that could close doors and block inheritance. Franklin managed the problem like a project. Franklin's common-law wife, Deborah Redd, helped raise William as her own. William always called her Mother. That acceptance created a shield. Franklin kept the biological mother's identity hidden to shield William from stigma and protect his own reputation. He edited the story by omission. The blank space was the point. William grew up in the Franklin household and rose to become Royal Governor of New Jersey. That job was the Crown's trust placed in him. But when the colonies began to tilt toward revolution, William faced an impossible choice. He had served in the British Army and studied law in London. He saw the Crown as a benevolent force and feared that independence would mean anarchy. Benjamin Franklin moved toward the opposite conclusion. The rift stopped being a disagreement and became a war inside a family. Benjamin urged William to resign, but William refused. In Nassaventemby 6, William was arrested and imprisoned. When he was released, he did not soften. He led loyalists and organized fighters. Benjamin Franklin was drafting the Declaration of Independence while his son fought for the nation they were separating from. In 1784, Benjamin wrote to William, "Nothing has pained me more than your conduct in engaging in arms against me. That line is a private wound turned into ink. The revolution shattered their family." William died in 1813 without being reconciled. Benjamin cut him from his will, citing William's public notoriety. The father who had protected his son's secret origin could not forgive his public betrayal. In July 1758, before the family broke apart, Benjamin Franklin went looking for gravestones in a small village in England called Ecton. He didn't go for fame. He went to clear moss off those old stones with his own hands. He traced the Franklins in the parish register back to 1555. He saw the family freehold homestead, which was run down. That detail told him that families can hold on for a long time and still end up with a worn-out house. Franklin found the gravestones of his Uncle Thomas and Aunt Eleanor and cleared the moss himself. He noted that the family had held tenure in the village for 300 years. That is not a slogan. It is grandparents living and dying in the same area. His ancestors were blacksmiths. Generation after generation chose the same hard path: blacksmith work, thrift, and stubborn self-reliance. Uncle Thomas Franklin, born in 1638, was bred as a blacksmith but became a self-taught lawyer, organ builder, bell innovator, and county leader. That is a pattern of curiosity and practicality. A boy like Benjamin, hearing stories of such a man, would learn that you do not have to stay what you were born to be. The family encouraged learning even without formal schooling. Franklin loved to tell the world he came from nothing, but his nothing was a family system that ran for more than 300 years. He honored a line of steady workers who held a small freehold through skill. He rose from that lineage, not in spite of it. The iron stayed in him. When Voltaire called him the most famous American in 1790, the fame looked like destiny. It wasn't. It was a chain of choices made under pressure. It started with a grandmother bought out of servitude. It continued with a father who steered a son away from the sea. It was forged in a candle shop and a print shop, and it was built by a 17-year-old who walked into Philadelphia with $1 silver and 3 rolls, refusing to be stuck. Benjamin Franklin did not start with a legend. He started with a decision to move.